Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room. Then and now, I'm Greg Crisp. Be joined later by Frank Fear and Mickey Plumley. Welcome to the show. And man, we got an exciting one tonight. We're all, I know Frank and I especially, been talking all week about our special guest tonight. We're looking forward to having Coach Terry Bowden on with us, and we know that's going to be a lot of fun. Anybody who knows anything about college football, definitely familiar with this guy and other members of his family, obviously, and we can't wait to get him on and talk to him here in just a couple minutes. And like I said earlier, Frank, Mickey will join us as we go through the show, and then toward the end of the show, after Terry leaves us, we'll be talking a little bit about Mountaineer football, some of the things going on in Morgantown, a little bit of news coming out of there today that I know is I would say not good news, but probably expected news, and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Also, we'll preview the BYU game coming up Friday night, and remind you that we'll be doing the pregame show and on Friday night. That's a late game, so we won't have the postgame show Friday night. I think we're planning on doing that maybe on Sunday. Frank can clarify that as we get on through the night, but we'll look back a little bit at the Utah game. If we have to, and look forward to the BYU game. So, with all that being said, let's not wait any longer. Let's go ahead and get our special guest in, Darren, if you will. Terry Bowden, the former coach, legendary coach from a legendary family, and we've had his brother on, and we thoroughly enjoyed that. And I did get a few texts and calls about you, Terry, coming on, and they said. Tommy was a lot of fun. He was funny. He sang for us. Did a lot of different things that night. He was a blast. Yeah. So we talked about gambling a little bit before. Not that any of us are gamblers, but we were talking about that. A lot of people want to know the odds on you being a more entertaining guest than Tommy. And I said, no question about it.
Well, that's a hard act to follow. Mr. Sarcasm himself is Tommy, and so and he's been retired long enough where he's got all his jokes lined up. But the funny thing is, I've always said I'm the second best coach. My dad's a famous coach. I'm the second best, and Tommy said, "No, Terry, you're the third best coach in your own family. Just let's get that right." And my brother Jeff, who was a coordinator at Florida State, and for me would say, "No, Terry, you're the fourth." So now we're all officially retired.
I just think about that. I can imagine dinners around the family table as you got older and all of your coaches. What those must have been like. I bet your mom probably was like, "Gee whiz, can we talk about something besides football?"
Well, that's what we all talked about. You talked about a joke the other day, my dear. We were all sitting together at Thanksgiving when my dad was still coaching and alive, and all of his 6 children, 6 spouses, and we were all cut up having a good time. And we looked down. He wasn't joining in, wasn't having fun. He said, "Children, I've got to apologize. It's Thanksgiving, and I'm not thankful. And we're together. I'm not happy." He says, "I'm not happy. I'm not thankful because I don't have any grandsons." And he said, he said, "Well, let's bow for a word of prayer, have a word of prayer." And when he looked up, we were all gone. And I had 5 girls. But anyway, we did a lot. We talked a lot of football around the table growing up. It was and my poor mother, you can imagine in the 90s when we were all in the height of our business, to have a good Saturday. You think about, West Virginia and BYU. To have a good Saturday, Dad had to beat the Florida Gators, Tommy had to beat South Carolina, and I had to beat Alabama just for her to have a good day. It wasn't easy on my mama, I'm gonna tell you.
Man, I bet. I'm sure she had some wild emotions during those times. I can't even imagine. That's pretty amazing. Tommy even I think, and again, Frank might have to clarify this, but he sang a song for us, and it was I think it was maybe the practice squad, the backup squad. They called them the bomb squad, I think is what he said.
The Bombers.
Yeah,
that was the Bombers.
Bombers, yeah.
Yeah, that was the scout team or the look team, the scout team. I was a bomber. I was a 4-year bomber. That's the guys who run the other team's plays, and I was the bomber. Guys like Jeff Mara, the great All-American, was on the defense, and Danny Buggs was a wide receiver, if you remember that. And
oh yeah,
great players. And but I was almost a lifetime Bomber.
Well, so they had they had their own fight song apparently.
Oh yeah.
Well,
we had a Bomber handshake. We had the Bomber handshake, and we had a Bomber parade. Yep. Where the coaches didn't like all this because some of it went to the extreme, but we had fun with it because we took pride in going out into practice every day, knowing we weren't going to play. Many of us were redshirted freshmen back when you had a freshman team. Others were walk-ons. I was a little walk-on, and so we just were the guys who gave a good look. Didn't get to play in the games that year. Many guys moved up and played later on in their career, but we took great pride. And then we had a draft, and the guy that got drafted, the number one Bomber of the year, and it was scary because the number one guy was the guy the team, I don't want to say despised, but he was the guy the team made fun of the most. And you sweated through that whole thing when it went down from 20 down to who's the Bomber of the year, the number one draft pick. In the Bomber, it was a BFL draft, Bomber Football League, Yeah, Tom, those are, but a lot of the players that we see when we go back into TCU, we go to the TCU game this year for the Bobby Bowden's boys, Bobby's boys, all the players over 5 years or 6 years that played for him are coming back together. And this goes back to the 70, because my dad became a head coach in 70 through 75. And every one of those guys would know what the Bombers are. Because somehow it ended after my dad left. I think it kind of ended. But it was every one of those players that'll be there. They'll know. Many of them were happy Bombers at one time.
Apologize for my biggest fan there. That's Snoop, and he gets excited when his mom comes home. But so now this, I think, Frank, you guys, y'all are listening. I'm not sure if maybe he was. What do they call deflecting on the song? We haven't heard. Can we hear the song?
I don't remember. To be honest with you, I know if I hear if you can hum a few bars, I can remember everything about but I don't remember what the song was. It was like Anchors Away, Bombers Away. I don't know if it was that or I'm not sure.
That was it.
That it? Yeah, because we had our own set of rules when we would go out before practice and have a Bomber football league. Where you weren't allowed to run because Bombers don't run anywhere they walk. You had to walk. Any catch was good, inbounds or out of bounds, because Bombers never catch them. So if you caught one, it was always complete. But we had so much fun with it. And Tommy wasn't a Bomber quite. Tommy ended up starting as a flanker. Here I was 5'6", 170-pound running back that ran a 4.9 40. It wasn't like they were long. I was behind Robert Alexander and all those backs at that Fulton Walker, some of the backs that were there while I was there. And in fact, Artie Owens the great Artie Owens when I was a freshman on the freshman team. He was the running back there. Had some good ones. But anyway, good memory. We loved it. It was I never played anywhere but Old Mountaineer Field, and it was a great old place to play.
I think that would be a good topic for a book. The Bombers would be an awesome book.
I led the team in field goal returns. You know how before the game when the field goal kicker has to practice, and my dad would say, "Hey Terry, get up in the stands and catch those field goals, bring them back down to us." I led the team in field goal returns 2 years in a row. In fact, he told me I found out I was a tailback. Because the first time I ran on the field, he told me to get my tail back on the bench. And so I became a tailback the rest of
the time. Oh, yeah. That reminded me of a story, a quick one. I was a basketball coach, and I had a couple of JV players one time. We were at a game, and I heard them arguing. We go in to get dressed, and they come in, and they're arguing back and forth with each other. The JV game had ended, and we'd warmed up. And I was like, what's going on with you guys? I had 32. He said he had 32. He only had 30. I'm like, what are you all talking about? One of the other players said, Coach, said they keep track of their points in warm-ups. try to beat each other and warm up. Well, at least
that would be a bomber. That would be a bomber story right there. That would be right there along with what we did. That's exactly right.
It made me think of it. That's good. That'd be perfect bombers. But at least they were being competitive. That's one good thing. Before we go on with the comedy show, let's get some serious questions here. You explained to us you played your entire career at WVU. You were in Morgantown the whole time.
Yeah, I lettered 2 years on special. I was able to, my dad left after the '75 season, and Frank Signetti took over. People who don't know who Kurt Signetti is, Kurt Signetti was about 5 or 6 younger than me, but his dad was my dad's offensive coordinator and then a head coach, and then I played for Frank Signetti there, and so I graduated there. And I wasn't the best player, but I did graduate with the highest honors academically. I was a magna cum laude graduate in accounting and Beta Sigma Gamma Business Society member. Went on to law school, graduated law school, got my master's degree, law degree from Florida State, my master's from Clemson, and I went to Oxford University and studied international law. And then dumb old me became a football coach.
Wow!
But I, you know what? But the education I got. It's funny. People say, "Well, where were you educated?" In West Virginia. Oh, was that tough? I mean, I said, "Hey, I went to Morgantown High School. I went to West Virginia, and I could have gone anywhere to postgraduate. The education I got there was as good as anywhere I could have gotten, and it allowed me to go get educated other places without any problem at all. And because of the quality of education, not just at the college, but at Morgantown High, Morgantown Junior High. And for some of y'all that know where Second Ward grade school is, right across from Jean's Beer Garden in Morgantown.
Absolutely.
Y'all know where Jean's is?
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Al Bonner, who owns Jean's, has owned it for 25 years. He and I went to grade school, junior high school, and college together, and he's still the owner of Jean's Beer Garden down there in Second Ward.
I believe I see your picture hanging up in there.
What's that?
I said, I believe I've seen your picture hanging.
Yeah, because like Al and I, we were on the baseball team. He was a basketball player. I was a baseball, football, wrestler in high school, but we were best friends forever. And so he's kind enough to put my picture up there.
Yeah, I worked up there. I got sick in December, but I worked up there for a couple of years prior. And my brother and I would go down to Jean's just about every day for a hot dog for lunch, and we'd always go in and look at all the pictures and talk to him quite a few times.
Well, Gene, it's funny. Jean's was back then. You could take your family and have a hot dog at Jean's. It wasn't a beer place just for adult men. You could sit around with the family and have a hot dog. They're known for their hot dogs, and we were either going to go to Jean's for a hot dog or Chico Dairy. Remember Chico's? Get a Mighty Mountaineer. Chico Dairy and Jean's were just staples, in Morgantown.
Yep. Yeah, awesome place. Yeah, if people get a chance, they need to go there and just check it out. So historic and got a lot of memorabilia in there. It's fun to look at and pictures, like I said, of you and that sort of thing. After you graduated and got finished with your degrees and everything, you began coaching. Why don't you go ahead and take the viewers through that coaching?
Take you through that.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to be a coach. I kind of went to law school because I said I want to go coach, but I don't know where to get my master's in. I was accounting, so I got a law degree. But when I got out, I said I'm gonna do what my dad did. I'm gonna go to a small college and be a head coach and learn the same way he did. Whereas Tommy became an assistant coach at major colleges. He was at Alabama. He was at Auburn. He was at a lot of different places as an assistant. I was a head coach at 26 years old. I was a head coach at Salem College down in right outside of Clarksburg. Y'all know that. And at 26, in fact, Joe Manchin, not the uncle of Joe Manchin, the senator, was the big guy that got me the job. He was a big therapist in town there, and he got me the job at Salem. And first quarterback I ever signed was a little kid out of Clarksburg named Jimbo Fisher. And so I signed Jimbo that first year, and we took that team. The team was 0-9-1 when I took it over. We ended up winning the conference championship a couple of times. Then I went to the head coach at Samford, where my mother and father went to college, and my dad was a head coach there. I went there, and we built that program up from a Division III to a 1AA. So 3 years at Salem. Then I was there for 6 years, And we went from a Division III school to a 1AA school. In fact, lost to Youngstown in our 4th year in scholarships. We lost to Youngstown State in the national semifinals, or would have played for the national championship. And then the next year, I got at 36 years old, I got the head coaching job at Auburn. And I spent 6 years there. And of course, we were very fortunate. They had 2 losing seasons, and 3 years in a row they lost Alabama. And we were able to go out there and win we went undefeated that first year. And that first year we went undefeated. We won the national championship. And I was fortunate enough to receive the National Coach of the Year award. And then we almost went undefeated again. We got to 20 straight games in the SEC and never lost. So for about 2 years, I was the Nick Saban for about 2 years of my life, And of course, Nick grew up right down the road from y'all in Monongah, as y'all know. But then I stayed there 6 years, and then left there, and I got hired by ABC Sports. And I went to New York City for 10 years, and I did the studio show in Times Square. So I left. My dad was getting famous about that time. He was becoming the big guy, and it kind of like, I didn't want to go follow my dad. I wanted to do something different. And so I left Auburn at a young age, about 42, and then went on to ABC in New York and did that for 10 years with a guy named John Saunders. We worked in the Good Morning America studios, and that was a lot of fun. And I did that till I was about 50. I did it from 40 to 50. And then when I turned 50, I said, I just want to go coach again. I don't know that I ever have to go to the top. I want to go back to so I went back to Division II and started over and got in 13 more years as a head coach in the coaching part. And I went to North Alabama and then to Akron and then to ULM. And then last year was my first year not coaching. And I'll be 70 in February, but I had a good career out of it. But I had a lot of fun, a lot of places, and it was a great experience. And now I'm back kind of in the broadcasting side of it, because I do podcasts 5 days a week. I do the Bowden Blitz on the Sports Grid Network. I do an Auburn network show 1 hour a week, and I have 3 hours with my co-host Joe Lisi. We do a show just on all the top 25 games as well. So kind of doing that now. So it's been got 6 wonderful children, and they're married, got grandchildren now. And I'm still in ULM, but because I got a studio here in my house and I do it here. So I'm still in Monroe. I'm in Monroe, Louisiana, and probably anxious a little bit to get back to that east side of the Mississippi River. I'm a little bit too far. I'm the only Bowden ever to live west of the Mississippi. And so, but I'm not but about 45 minutes west of the Mississippi, so it's not too bad.
Well, time you come back. That's right. Wow, what a fantastic career, and I'm sure lots of fun, lots of stories, and I know we don't have time for a lot of them tonight, but just hearing about where you've been and what you've accomplished, pretty fascinating, and still busy with the podcast. And again, that podcast is on the Sports Grid Network.
Sports Grid Network. You can get it, and you go to YouTube. If you go to YouTube podcast, YouTube TV, okay. YouTube, you can look up my Bowden Blitz on YouTube and pick up almost all my. I'm mostly ACC and SEC, but I also do a top 25 and a show.
Bowden Blitz. Okay, sounds good. One more question for me before I turn it over to Frank or Mickey. You mentioned your national championship at Auburn. Of course, we all remember that. And as a Mountaineer fan, we always rooted. I know I did always for your dad, you and your brother, anytime wherever you were coaching, and always hoped you succeeded. And that was fun to watch that. But is that the one? That national championship, is that the is that the pinnacle? Is that the apex at the top of the mountain for you?
Well, let me tell you, it's an interesting story, because we were not awarded the national championship that year. 93 and 92, they had several services that had national champ. In other words, Georgia Tech, Colorado shared the championship, and every year going in, they shared it. That year, they decided to try to unify it and give one championship. So that year they only gave one official championship from the NCAA that time. But you know who got it?
Yeah.
My dad. He in the best year of my life, I'm the second best in my own family. But this past year, Auburn, I don't know if they legislated the NCAA, but everybody, but they want to recognize all their national champions, and we were awarded the national championship by the National Football Foundation or something. And so they officially announced, and they accepted that we would recognize the national championship of that team. Now, I will say this, first thing I did was I called my lawyer. I said, hey, would you go back and look at my contract? I'm pretty sure I got a bonus for winning a championship, and I could use that money if you could. But it's funny because, I mean, you can imagine the competition, the fun competition in our family.
Oh, yeah.
Because Tommy was on my staff, and my brother Jeff was on my dad's staff in 93. And so we go undefeated. He loses to Notre Dame, comes back and wins the championship. We're on probation. The coach before me got fired for illegal recruiting or messed up, and so I got the job, but we couldn't go to the championship. And so we had beaten the defending national champions were Alabama. We beat them. We beat Florida. We beat LSU. We beat Georgia, but we couldn't play for it. So Dad got to play for it. But at the end of the day, we were the only undefeated team at the end of the year. But my dad got to win the award, and he's always kidding me about that because, I mean, even in my best year, because at that time, I was the youngest Division I head coach in the country. Then I was the first Division I coach ever to go undefeated in his first year in Division I by going back then it was 11-0. It wasn't 12.
Right.
And yet and yet Dad got that big old trophy sitting at home. Still second. And we laughed about that a lot.
Yeah, I do remember that in the controversy, and I know a lot of discussion about it. A lot of people don't remember, before there was no, no championship game per se. Like
no,
there was, in a sense there was, but there really wasn't. It was up to the writers and different.
That's right. You had UPI champions, you had AP champions, you had Dinkle champions, you had you had about 3 or 4. And what ticks off Auburn is that Alabama they recognize about 6 or 8 national champions prior to 1990 that they might have lost a game, but they recognize every one of theirs, before that. So Auburn got kind of mad. So, if y'all can do it, we can do it. So they found 2 or 3 that they had been awarded the championship. And unfortunately we got ours, but you know what? It doesn't make a whole lot of beans, except it's kind of fun to say.
Yeah.
It's kind of like winning a major. It's like being a PGA golfer and winning a major. When you win a major, that kind of stands out,
Yeah.
When you win a championship, it kind of just separates you.
Right. All right. I'm going to step back here and not take up all the time. I'm going to let Frank jump in here. Or let's do Mickey. Mickey, you jump in, and then we'll bring Frank in last. And Mickey, when you get done, if you want to bring Frank in afterwards, that way I can just sit back and watch and enjoy. So join us, Mickey Plumley. Absolutely.
Hey, Terry, it's good to see you again, my friend.
Mickey, how are you doing? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. I'm back in West Virginia, back in Charleston.
You back in Charleston? How about that?
Well, I started out after I graduated from WVU. I tell you, Terry, you look and sound so much like your dad. It just does my heart good to sit here and listen to you talk. The last time I saw you in person, you were 13 years old, and I was 21.
Yeah.
And the year was 1969.
Right.
I played for your dad when he was the offensive coordinator between 66 and 69.
I remember
and
you.
I can remember you and Tommy running around Old Mountaineer Field.
Yeah.
And he's older than you.
Tommy's 2 years older. He's 2 years older.
Okay, so I believe you were about 13. He was about 15.
Yeah.
I was just wondering if you have any remembrances of that time in your early teenage years, being in Morgantown.
Oh.
Your dad being the offensive coach, about to become the head coach for the Mountaineers. That whole period, 66 through 75, when he left. What's your remembrances of what it was like to be a Mountaineer? Particularly, we were talking last week about Old Mountaineer Field compared to today's stadium. You have any recollections about those things?
Well, all my memories of Morgantown are with the Old Mountaineer Field. I mean, Choosy Mothers across the street, the Mountaineer that was under where the players would stay during the summer. And Rocky Gianola was my best friend in high school. He went and played at West Virginia as well. We would go down in the summer and work out as junior high school kids and high school kids. We were junior high at that time, just to hang around and watch the players on the old AstroTurf at Mountaineer Field and see all that. And we enjoyed that part. I remember like it was yesterday, and all the good things that I remember from there. I remember when we went to the Peach Bowl in Atlanta, and if that I think it might have been the first. It wasn't the year that Southcott was the year we won the game 17-14. I think was that 70. That might have been 70. That might have been a bit later. Seems like to me we went in 70. Were you on the Peach Bowl team? Or was that 70?
I was on the 1969 Peach Bowl team.
Yeah,
we played and beat South Carolina.
South Carolina. Yeah, was that the one where you
South Carolina?
Rain?
It poured the rain, buckets.
Yeah, that
night.
was.
I believe
that was the. Yeah, beat them in the rain.
Paul Diesel was coaching South Carolina.
Yeah, he was my AD at Samford. Paul Diesel was my AD at Samford. But if that's the game I remember, my dad was the offensive coordinator, and he had a heck of a lot of good running backs. And if I want to say, he put in an offense called the Wishbone Y. Is that game where and nobody ever run the Wishbone? He has a fullback up close and two halfbacks back. He changed it around. He put a back deep and the other two backs closer. And they called it the Wishbone Y, and he ran up and down the field. I want to say he ran on South Carolina up and down the field in the mud that day.
Terry, we set the ground rushing record for the Peach Bowl that night, and it still stands. We had over 450 yards on the ground that night. We ran 79 plays that night, and 77 of them were running plays. But your dad was responsible for that. When we got the bowl bid, we had run the I formation the first 3 years, and he called up a fellow by the name of Houston Nutt, who invented that offense.
I coached against Houston.
I think he spent some time with them. He came back. He had an offensive meeting. He said, boys, we're going to put in the Wishbone offense. And we said, Coach, we only got like 30 days here for the bowl game. He said, I got confidence in it. You can do it. And we did it. I can remember your dad when we came out for pregame warmups, and it was pouring down the rain, just buckets. Right. And when South Carolina came out, those guys were avoiding all the muddy spots on the field while the old Mountaineers warming up. We were diving into the mud pools and sliding 10, 15 yards, and Coach Bowden was telling everybody else, yeah, we got these guys tonight. No question about that.
Great.
Let me ask you. I want to ask you a couple of questions about your coaching career.
Right.
You mentioned you went on to Samford, and you were the youngest head coach in America at 26 years old at Samford, right? And
that was at Salem. That was at Salem.
Oh, that was at Salem. I'm sorry.
Because I went to Salem when I was 26, and then I was the youngest Division I head coach at Auburn at 36, and Samford was in between.
Was in between, yeah.
In between.
And your dad had coached at Samford, right?
Him and my mom went to Samford, and then he went back and was the head coach there. And they dropped football in around 1970, the old oil embargo days, and then they brought it back in the early 80s, and I took it over in 87 and they were non-scholarship, just trying to organize their football, and we moved up from Division III to 1AA, and they're still 1AA today. But that was our family school in Birmingham. You know, Dad was always from Birmingham. You know, that's kind of where his mom and daddy, his grandparents, my mom's grandparents were all there. And so that was kind of their home. But all of his children were raised in Morgantown. And the oldest four, Robin, Steve, Tommy, and me, graduated from West Virginia. Jeff and Ginger, the two young ones, graduated from Florida State because they were younger and still in high school when he left. And I'm going to give you some corrections so you have this. He didn't get the offense from Houston Nutt. He went down to Houston, and at the University of Houston was a guy named Bill Yeoman. He invented the split. He invented the veer option. So Dad spent a week, but I know Houston. Houston Nutt was at Arkansas. I coached against him when he was at Arkansas, but he's a little bit younger than that. But Bill Yeoman is famous for inventing it was called the split back veer. But Dad took the split back veer from Bill Yeomans and got y'all to work on it. But he put 3 backs in the backfield, and he combined the split back veer with the Texas wishbone, because wishbone was 3 backs. The split back veer that Bill Yeomans was two backs. He put those together, and y'all were the only teams who ever ran it. In South Carolina, I had no idea, and they called it the wishbone Y because it was in the shape of a Y as opposed to the shape of a V. It was backwards in the shape of the Y, and just ran, like you said, ran all over South Carolina. But the thing that I remember, and I don't know if it was that Peach Bowl or the next one, Morgantown, we didn't have any big hotels. We went to Atlanta to play the Peach Bowl and stayed at a hotel that actually had an elevator that had glass, and you could see yourself going up and down. And I can remember being scared to death going up 14 stories in an elevator where you could see outside the elevator. And I said, I'd never been to a big one like that before. In Morgantown, we had Hotel Morgan. We could stay at Hotel Morgan back in those days down by the Warner Theater, down there. But that was about the fanciest hotel I ever stayed at.
I think that may have been the Hyatt Regency, same place we stayed in 1969, and had a revolving restaurant up on the roof.
Yes, it did. That's it.
Had the same impression that you had.
Yeah.
One more question for you, and then I'll turn you over to Frank. I don't want to take up all the time here. When you moved from Samford to Auburn, mm-hmm. you had those NCAA sanctions that had been placed on the team due to the prior coach's actions. So there was no games televised.
No televised.
You couldn't participate in bowl game that year, right?
That's
and you had a limited number of scholarships.
They cut it. Well, they began to cut them back. We lost maybe 3 that year, 4 the next year. For about 3 or 4 years, we lost a few.
Okay, so how in the world do you motivate players at the collegiate level when you're faced with a situation like that, where you can't be on TV, you can't go to a bowl game?
Yeah.
What was your leadership principles that you coached by that enabled that team to go 11-0 that year? That's always intrigued me.
Well, I think the good thing that happened, because Tommy Bowden was on my staff, Jimbo Fisher was on my staff, Rick Trickett was on my staff. A lot of old West Virginia people were on my staff. But one thing that we had learned to do was work real. We had a great work ethic. We had a great work ethic, and the things that my dad taught me was make sure those players don't worry about things you can't control. Don't worry about things you can't control. Go out there and take it one game at a time, and believe in yourself. And it's funny because I took the offense I had at Samford, and it was my dad's offense that he had been running at Florida State and I had been using. But take those kids, and I said, man, let's just take them one game at a time. And I don't want to tell you, before a season as a head coach, my dad would do it. Now you pull out that little envelope and you write down your schedule and how many you think you might win, how many you think you lose. You put it back in the bottom and you don't look at till the end of the year. And I don't think there was 5 or 6 that I felt real good about. We had, we were underdogs or going to have to upset people. And really, because we were underdogs, because we weren't given a lot of chance, I can remember the most important thing I talked about to my staff was let's go win that first one. Dang, let's just win the first game. And in the back of my mind, I said, Lord, just let me win one more game than they won last year. They had won like 5 games. And so, but what happens, we didn't ever think ahead. I watched Florida State lose to Virginia this past weekend. And I just had to think they were thinking ahead to Miami, that they were, but there was there was no future. So every game became critical. And of course, I'm like a kid in a candy store. I went from Samford, where 3,000 people watch a game, to 90 to 100,000 out there watching every game. And its experience was great, but we did what you have to get coaches, teams to do. Take it one game at a time, and don't get too worried about the final, what's going to happen at the end of the year. Just like Rich Rodriguez right now, he's got a building process. And I didn't think he'd beat Pitt. He beats Pitt, but he's still got to build his team, and he's got to convince those guys. Let's just take it one game at a time, and as we get players, we'll get there. But anyway, that was the thing that I think I was fortunate enough to take it one game at a time. And then another thing, Mickey, I call my own plays. Like my dad, I call plays. And so I had 9 years of running the offense at little schools. and I called every play. And when I got to Auburn, I was running the exact same offense. It was what my dad ran. And that in 10 years of calling the same plays, you get pretty good at it. I was at the peak of understanding how to call plays with my offense. And I had a great feel for it. I didn't have to have a game plan in my hand. I had it memorized in my head. And that was kind of at the right time for me to be very good at running the offense that we were running. My dad was always an outstanding offensive coach. And I kind of grew up under him knowing that.
Hey, Mickey,
Okay.
before we bring Frank back in, I wanted to, when he said that about those three, the letters with the games in it, I had a similar story with a guy I coached football with in high school, and his father had coached college, and when he got the job, the former coach gave him these envelopes. He gave him 3 envelopes, and he said, "Well, what are those for?" And he said, "Well, you just go ahead and coach." And he said, "If it ever gets rocky, you start losing games," he said, "you might want to open the first envelope." So the first season went great. Next season started off good. Started losing a few games here and there. People started to rumble a little bit. So he said, "I better open this envelope." So he opened up the first envelope, and it said, blame the fans and the media." So he comes on the next day on his radio show and just gives the fans a hard time for not coming to the games, and the media for bashing them and letting secrets out and all those types of things. And so he got back on the winning track, won some more. Then the following year he started losing again. So he opened up a second letter. The second letter said, "Blame your assistant coaches." So he comes out in the media and blasts his assistant coaches, not doing their jobs, not coaching hard enough. We're going to do better, etc. So to make a long story short, he runs into another losing streak here in that third year, and he decides to pop open that third letter. He opens it up, and it says, "Prepare 3 letters." So, all right, Frank, you want to jump in there now? Let me and Mickey will get in the background. You jump in.
Well, Terry, it's great seeing you. And, we haven't talked about North Alabama. And you had a great 3 years there. Playoffs, I think every year you were there, won like 30 out of 40 games. Talk about your 3 years at North Alabama.
Well, it was getting back into the business. I mean, and I did something that made it very hard to get back into coaching. A lot of times a coach TV will grab you and you'll go a year or two, but you're trying to get back in as fast as you can. Well, after Auburn, I got hired, but really at that point, it was the primo job in television. It was New York City, Times Square, pregame, halftime, postgame of every big game, going to the championship game. And I got to the point where I said, you know what, I can't be better than my dad. I kind of wanted to be a spokesperson for college football. I said, I can do that in broadcasting. Well, as I got older, I got tired of being on the wrong end of the camera, and I wanted to go out there and coach football. And so because I was a studio analyst, they let me broadcast 1 game a year after the season, and it was the Army-Navy. I got to go to the Army-Navy game every year and broadcast that in the booth, and it was my favorite game of all time. And then after that, they let me go broadcast the Division II National Championship. And the Division II National Championship was played in Florence, Alabama. It wasn't Florence. It wasn't North Alabama. So while I was broadcasting the game after the Army-Navy, I went to Florence, and I was broadcasting the National Championship Division II game. And while the game was being played, the AD slips a note under the door, because we had talked at a little cocktail hour the night before. He said, "We just lost our coach. Would you be interested in coaching at North Alabama?" And I had never I thought I'd go back to Division I. I said, you know what? I just want to go coach football. I've made some good money and I've enjoyed the thing, and I just want to coach like I did when I was young. And North Alabama ended up being the perfect place to go. And we went out there and we were undefeated going into the last game of the season, ranked number 1, and that was a great start. And that led to the Akron job. I got the Akron job, which I loved because it was, about 3 hours from Morgantown. And that's where Jeff Marrow was from. Mickey, you know Jeff Marrow, I know, but he was from Akron. Oh, yeah. I think that was my dad's, him and Carl Cornell and Jim Braxton were my dad's first All-Americans. and Merrill may have been his first big NFL player, maybe. I think that he had at West Virginia, but he had some good ones. But anyway, I got the North Alabama job and then loved it, and then got the Akron job and was able. And Akron was terrible, and we turned that one around. And so those were great times. I think the biggest thing that a lot of these coaches, they go into television, and when they come back into coaching, they want to go right back to the top, and they sit around and those things don't open like that. You stay in there too long, and pretty soon they don't come calling. And so if you love the game, then go back and coach. And I had as much fun, if not more, coaching at North Alabama and at Akron and ULM. And then the reality is at ULM, when you get a new AD, the first thing they want to do is buy your contract out and bring their own guy in. And so I ended up getting out of coaching 2 years younger than I had planned. But you know what? I 68 years old was pretty dang good. And you coach long enough, you're going to probably have a departure that you're not pleased with somewhere along the line.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talked about Akron, and one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know, you actually went to 2 bowl games for the Akron Zips, and that is a heck of an accomplishment. We were talking on the phone that Bill Muse was your president at Auburn.
Sure was.
When you were there, and before that, Bill had been president of Akron, and I asked him once, what are the things that you're proud of over your career? And one of the things he said, boy, I lobbied really hard at Akron for Terry to get that job. And he said, boy, he did a great job. Think about Bill Muse. That was interesting, Terry.
He was my president at Auburn.
Yes.
And also from Akron, but he's an interesting fellow. And I really admire him and was very thankful for his support.
Yeah. One of the things you may know is that when he was president of Akron, he brought Jerry Faust up to Akron as a head coach. And he was one of the guys that was responsible for Bob Huggins to come from Walsh to Akron as a basketball coach. So there are a lot of linkages between Bill Muse.
And I didn't mention it, but between Salem and Sanford, I went to Akron 1 year. In fact, I've only been an assistant coach 1 year in my life. I went as the quarterback coach for Jerry Faust. And so me and Bobby Huggins went to school when I went to school. He was good friends with Tommy. He was Tommy's age, not my age. And so at West Virginia, then when he got to Akron, he was at Akron when I got there with Jerry Faust as a quarterback coach. And we had a guy working for us like Denver Allen, who was also he used to work in the athletic department at West Virginia, but he was also at Akron at that time. And it was a great little time. We had great. Bobby Huggins I love being a head coach in football when Bobby is the head coach in basketball, because anything he was so good. He'd ask whatever he asked for, they had to give him. And so I got whatever he got, I got. I said, hey, if you give it to them, you got to give it to us, Yeah. And so
hey, Terry, were you there when Huggins came up with this idea to rev up interest in the basketball program to get that cow out in front of the field house?
I don't remember. I don't remember. I wish I'd tell you if I did. I don't remember. I was only there 1 year because I got a job right. After getting there, I got the Sanford job 1 year later, and didn't spend a lot of time there. But I didn't know that. What story was it? What did he do now?
Well, when he went from Walsh College in Ohio to take Akron, there wasn't a heck of a lot of interest in Zips basketball.
No.
And he didn't have much of a PR budget either. John Antonik has written about this, and Bill Muse told me the same story because he was president at the same time. So he spent all his PR money on the basketball team 1 year with a dairy and said, could you plop your cow in front of the field house before games? And Bill Muse called him up and said, get that cow away from there. and so Huggins had to go over and negotiate with the president. I think Huggins got his way for a while, but it's a great story. Yeah. Hey, I was going to say, Terry, talking about linkages with West Virginia, I want to talk about Rich Rod because he went to WVU too. Tommy hired him when Tommy was at Tulane. Then he followed him to Clemson. You hired Rich Rod after Arizona, I think, to be your OC. Talk about
OC,
Rich Rod.
Yeah, Rich Rod. Now, Rich Rod, we go back because he went to West Virginia right after I graduated. He went and played for Don Nalen. And then I go to Sanford as the head coach. And then after I leave Salem, I go to Salem as the head coach. And then a guy named Corky Griffin took over for 1 year. But Rich went there as his assistant. And then he left, Corky left, and Rich took over as probably a 25-year-old head coach. And they dropped football on him. And he's stuck, And so he ended up going to Glenville State. But Rich was a good friend of Jimbo's, and Jimbo was with me, and we had a Bowden quarterback receiver academy. It's like the Manning camp. We had the top quarterback camp in the country, and we would pay Rich Rod and Jimbo and those guys $100 a day to come work our camp. Well, we knew Jimbo because he played for me, but we didn't know Rich. But now once Rich got there, we watched him work. Tommy got the Tulane job, and he takes Rich with him to Tulane from Glenville. Because Ted Darby, not Jed Drennan. Jed. Yeah, I don't know if y'all know Jed.
Oh,
he
yeah,
has a sideline for West Virginia, but he was with me at Sanford in Birmingham, but he went to Glenville to play for Rich Rod. But anyway, Tommy took Rich Rod to Tulane as his coordinator, and then took him to Clemson as his coordinator. And then he went on to West Virginia fame, and then he went on to Michigan and Arizona. But after he left Arizona, he was in that no man's land between where do I go, how do I stay in the business? And so, but he had a son who was a quarterback at Arizona, but he had a year or two left of eligibility. And I called Rich. I said, Rich, I really want to get your son, recruit him to play for me and finish up his career. And so the son, he said, well, I'd like him to go there. I said, Rich, why don't you come and coach him? So I talked Rich into getting back in the business as my offensive coordinator. He coached his son, and then I was hoping to keep him for 2 years. I said 2 years he'll be a Division I coach again in 2 years. Well, he left after 1 to take the Jacksonville job, and then that projected him to West Virginia. And so Rich was hired by Tommy, and then was hired by me, and then he's of course made a name for himself. And but you know what? You look at Morgantown during that era. Tommy Bowden, Terry Bowden, Bobby Bowden, Nick Saban Monongah, Rich from Granttown, and Jimbo from Glen Falls out there by Clarksburg. That's a lot of pretty good football coaches for right in a very small area right there. And every one of them, I think, would pride ourselves, say, what's the biggest asset you had? Blue collar. Either your dad was a coal miner or you knew it was a tough life and you worked hard. And all of us were blue collar hard workers. And Rich was the same way.
Great stories. Greg, I'm going to kick it back to you. We
Okay.
know that Terry's got a show at the top of the hour.
Yep.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
It's been fun though, man.
Yep.
I'm gonna tell you.
Hey, you mentioned Rich at Glenville. I remember I graduated from Glenville, and I would go back and watch games. And when he had Jed Drennan, he had a receiver, George. His last name was George. I can't remember his first name.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
he broke
I remember. He
broke
broke
all
all the
of
records.
Jerry Rice's records.
Oh
Yeah,
they
broke
threw
them
it.
all. Still has them. I think.
Rich threw it 60 times a game. He never ran it. And then after he got out of Clemson, he never threw it. He ran it. He became more of a running coach. But he started out throwing it every down. And then when he went with Tommy to Lane, that's how Tommy got to Clemson. They had a quarterback named Sean King, and they gave Tulane the first undefeated season ever. And they threw it about every down there. No huddle, fast break. And it was great.
Oh, yeah. And one last thing before I let you go. Did you play, I always ask this of guys in your era, with Tommy Pridemore?
Yeah, Tommy was my freshman class. In fact, I got married when I was in college. I was a 19-year-old, got married to Twyla Jeffries, Roger Jeffries, her father, who is now passed. He was assistant AD at West Virginia in charge of their car program. And so Twyla and I got married, and Tommy was in my wedding. So Tommy, and I was going to say right out of what's Fayette, the little town he was from, right by Fayetteville. He wasn't from Fayetteville. It was, Ansted. He was from Ansted, the suburb, the famous suburb of Fayetteville. Maybe I don't know.
Don't say that around.
No, I just kidding. Just no.
You don't want Ansted people hear that.
I'll be in trouble for that one. No, Tommy, great football player. Golly, was he a great. He and Jeff Merrill played together for the Falcons for a long time.
Yeah, he's from. I'm from Anstead as well, and he grew up
Yeah.
down the road from where I live. And always have to ask that. Listen,
Well,
this
I
has
get
been
back to the
absolutely
I get back to
fantastic.
the New River about once a year to go whitewater rafting. So
Awesome,
that's the most
awesome.
beautiful part
Yeah.
of West Virginia. I'll say that.
Very nice place, absolutely. Terry, it has been an absolute pleasure. Enjoyed listening to you talk, telling great stories. We loved every minute of it. We hope to have you back whenever you're
Just let
ready.
me know.
We would welcome you back, and a lot of fun, a lot of great
I hope
stories.
I see y'all in Morgantown on the 25th of October. We're going to be there for
That
the TCU game. All the Bowden boys.
that would be fantastic. Look forward to it. Thank you again for
Thank
your
you.
time so much, and enjoy your broadcast tonight.
All right, see y'all now. Take care.
All right, bye bye. Thank
Hey,
you.
Terry.
All right, good to see y'all.
All right, Frank, Mickey, you're back in here with me now. I tell you what, those are, Frank, we've talked how much we were looking forward to this show, and I'm happy to say it didn't disappoint.
No, what you said before, Tommy and Terry were each fantastic, each in their own way. But boy, I'll tell you what I didn't know was the educational background for
My
Terry.
goodness.
I didn't know he had two graduate degrees and
Wow.
studied at Oxford, and they've and this reinforces something we've talked about so many times, but it bears repeating. How people that we have on this show who are affiliated with the university not only are great in football, obviously, or they wouldn't be here, but how they've distinguished themselves in the work that they've done, whether it be in football or other fields after they graduated. And Terry is one of those. And I hadn't realized now that I think back. Yeah, sure, he was with ABC for a decade. Boy, oh
Yeah.
boy, yeah, incredible.
Yeah, I had kind of forgotten that until he mentioned it. Then I remember, and you know what? He was really good at it too, and obviously stayed at it 10 years. They wouldn't kept him around if he wasn't good at it. But yeah, he excelled in that as well. But what a football coach! What you look at that family. My goodness, I mean, just it's just got to be you got to be born with that. I mean, there's something special about that, and the abilities to do the things that they all did, and you look at their careers and all the wins and all that. But I think one thing that stands out, not more so than the wins, is just the type of people they are and the impact that they had on people's lives. You never hear a bad word about any of them, and I think that's what stands out most of all.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I didn't want to say when he was there, but I think some people know this, that there was a lot of interest after Rich Rod left for Terry to be the head coach in West Virginia. And I talked
Yeah,
about my friend, colleague, Bill Muse, who at that
yeah,
time was a president emeritus, and he lobbied significantly. It didn't happen. Bill Stewart got the job. But wherever Terry's gone, he's had an impact at schools that don't have much of a football background. I shouldn't say it
yeah,
that way, but particularly currently like Akron.
yeah,
But he just a special person.
yeah, yeah. And I think I mean I'm sure he would never tell, but just from everything we heard back then, he was very close to getting the job. A lot of people wanted him to have the job at WVU, and I think it would have been a good move. But it's water under the bridge now, and
That's right.
I'm sure he hadn't thought a whole lot about it, but since then. But yeah, from my understanding was it was pretty close to happening, and of course, how those things are. It's just depends on who's lobbying for who, and who has the power with the purse and that sort of thing. So you never know. Anyway, speaking of that, we got news, and I'm sure you guys have heard and read that Nico Marchio, the quarterback, W quarterback, is set to enter the transfer portal. And I didn't know if you guys had heard that first. He was, it's kind of strange that after that fourth game, he reveals an injury. He's placed on the back burner for that, and then all of a sudden now he's in the transfer portal. So get your guys' thoughts about that, Frank, if you want to go first.
Well, actually, my source was Darren.
Oh
Darren
yeah,
sent me a text, and so I wasn't surprised. I hadn't heard it before. But as I mentioned to Darren in response, you got to give a lot of credit for Nico. Stuck around, incredibly loyal. You got to give credit to Rich Rod and the staff for going with him. But I mean, you don't have to be experienced in football or having played football to know that his style of play really fits a pro set offense much better than a dual threat requirement that you have in what Rich Rod runs, and so it really wasn't a good fit. And so I think it's fair to say that we always viewed it as an experiment. We hoped it would work, and as I mentioned to Darren, taking a redshirt year preserves his eligibility, and I think he'll make an impact elsewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think he's obviously got some skills, and he's a good quarterback, and I just think, like you said, it's a system thing, and it takes certain types of people to run certain types of systems, and it just didn't seem like it was a good fit, from the beginning, and he relies so much on that running quarterback, and not just a running quarterback, but a real runner, fast and elusive and strong and all those types of things. And I don't know that Nico's body makeup was for that. I don't know he had the speed. But yeah, you got to give credit to him for sticking around as long as he has. And he got his shot, and it just didn't work out. And like you said, I think he can go somewhere. He'll have this year, another year extra, with the red shirt, because he only played 4 games this year. But he'll make an impact somewhere, if he goes to the right spot. And he seems like he's pretty bright, and I'm sure that's something that they discussed and talked about. And I'm sure Coach Rich Rodriguez will help him find a place to land that he thinks he'll fit. And so, yeah, it'll work out for everybody in the end. I think you hate to see it because, I think he had, because of the fact that he hung around so long, he'd become kind of a fan favorite. Of course, the backup quarterback always is the most popular guy on the team, especially when you start losing. I don't think he wasn't as popular this year with a lot of fans, but I think all Mountaineer fans admire him for sticking it out and staying here and being loyal and that sort of thing. So hats off to him for that. Mickey, your thoughts on that?
Well, I hate to see him go. I mean, the kid's a real winner. There's no question about that. Not only on the field, but off the field as well. He did so much behind the scenes with WVU Children's Hospital in helping out in community affairs. I mean, just all around a great guy, a good leader. The difficulties that he had this year, I would put on the offensive line more so than him. I believe he started 6 games and he went 5-1, so that's not a bad record.
Nope.
I just hope he doesn't end up at, he's from Arizona originally, so I hope he doesn't end up at Arizona or Arizona State or one of the schools we may end up playing.
Yeah.
He'll do well.
That always
no
seems
matter
to
where he goes.
come back to haunt you when that type of thing happens. And we're going to look back at the Utah game, Frank, Mickey. I don't know that I don't really know that I want to look back at it. I'd like to just never look at it again. What a horrible performance, and man, I think Rich has his work cut out for him to keep these guys motivated and positive and energetic. Listening to Terry talk about one game at a time, that's what they've got to be talking about. They just got to forget, and I always used to tell my teams the sign of a good team or the sign of a good player is win or lose, you forget about the last play, whether it was good or bad, and you start thinking about the next play. And these guys have got to start doing that. They've got to, they got to look ahead and keep trying to improve. And I'm not saying, look ahead to go undefeated, but look at each game as a step on the ladder, just to getting better, try to improve and make something of the season. You got to have something positive. It's going to be tough for Coach Rodriguez. Frank, I don't know, your thoughts on that, but I think it's he's got a heck of a job in front of him.
Well, he does. And the schedule maker, the Big 12 schedule maker, didn't make it any easier because, I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, Kansas has a bye week to prepare for WVU, and then we have to travel there. And now we have a situation where, and Rich Rod talked about it at yesterday's press conference. He said the preparation this week is really more mental than physical because they're losing at least probably 2.5 days of practice. Yep. And then they have to travel west to play a night game. And think about this in terms of the biological clock. Yeah. Starting at 10:30. And it's always more difficult. I had a friend at Michigan State who was a demographer, and his avocation was taking all kinds of data from team performance and then predicting. And he had connections with the gambling industry that would buy these data. And one of the things he found was how difficult it is for teams to travel from east to west because of those time changes. And he said 2 hours, 3 hours can make a big difference because of your biological clock. Yep. And so this is not, because now West Virginia goes on a bye week after the BYU game. But the thing I will say is playing Utah and BYU, if there's an advantage to WVU, it's playing those two teams back to back. They're not the same, mind you, but if you look at the quarterbacks, they're not, they don't stand out per se. In fact, the BYU quarterback is a different look. He's more of a halfback that's playing quarterback. He's a freshman, but they both have really good offensive lines. Rich Rod said, the BYU defense, particularly the linebackers, may be the best linebacking core. And so there is a lot of similarities between those two teams. And it's just you're looking for some indication of progress. It's not just a blip that you see something good happen, and then the next week it happens again and happens again. So you see a pattern. So it's we're just going to have to wait and see, and hopefully this will be a week where we get one of those blips that's not just a blip, but it happens next week. The big question, let me ask Mickey this: who do you think is going to start quarterback?
I think it'll be Cahill Williams. I think there's some social media out there that's saying both Max Brown and Jalen Henderson are questionable for the game. And Wilkins did show some potential when he played against Utah, and I think you start building on the future with him as your starting quarterback at this point.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough. The concentration has to be, as you have already said, and as Terry said, you have to try to go 1-0 each week. And that's all you can do this year. It's a rebuilding year. I don't think the team is as bad as the two most recent scores indicated when you take into account the fact that we've just been totally decimated by injuries. Totally decimated by injuries. I'd like to see how this season would have turned out if we didn't have the injuries. Jaheim going down, everybody going down, Preston Fox going down. All the injuries, I think, have really delayed the visibility of that improvement. On the other hand, as Rich Rod said in his last press conference, it does give them an opportunity to put some freshmen out there on the field, start building for the future, and see what kind of talent these guys really have. Right now, particularly at the offensive line level, we're totally outmatched in the Big 12, and we got to find a way to overcome that. You do the best you can with what you got to work with.
Yeah, Frank, you mentioned, old coach I used to coach with, say you have to dance with who brung you, and that's what we're doing right now. But you mentioned the travel, and anybody that's ever flown through time zones know what it does to you. It zaps you, and it's hard to recover from. And I'm sure they'll go early enough to where they have a little bit of time to get acclimated. But man, you want to talk about all the cards stacked against you. West Virginia seems to be in that boat right now that everything seems to be working against them. And like Mickey said, with all the injuries we've had, but again, and I mentioned this the other day, the silver lining is, you're getting to play some people and see some people that you may have not normally gotten to play and see. And, to build a program, you've got to do that, even if it's, even if it's 3 or 4 players that you notice and think, okay, this guy can help us win. He came in, at the beginning of the year with nobody like that. I mean, basically had to replace everybody on the roster and, 85% of it. So he didn't have those people there. At least now he'll know, I've got 2 guys on the line that I think I can depend on and are going to get better for next year. And I've got a couple of receivers or running backs or whatever position may be. At least he knows he's going to have those folks, sitting there as he brings in other players, and that's going to help some with the program building, and that'll help each year afterwards as you identify more players that can win at this level, and you get more players in that can win. He'll have more time to work on that and to study on that, and he's done this. He's built the programs, and like Mickey said, this is a rebuilding year. Period. So what you've got to do is look at this talent pool. What do you have, and then try to get better each week and try to improve these guys. And you want to see that. The problem we've had, I think, so far is when you expect to see a little bit of improvement and you have an injury, like on the offensive line. The center went out, and then one of the tackles went out, and it's hard to show improvement as a cohesive group when you keep losing parts of it and having to replace those parts. And, so that's been one of the tough things with these injuries. I don't know, winning and losing, it may have made some difference. I don't think it would have made a ton of difference, maybe a game here and there. But, I think more telling is the fact that it just keeps you from being able to, to mold together and to improve and get better each week. I think that's where the injuries have really just killed us.
Yeah, I agree completely. And talk about the injuries. Ty Edwards is questionable this week. He's critical. Think back to that Pitt game. Even though we talk about the emergence of Nico in that game, if Ty Edwards is not running that ball up the middle, didn't get over 100 and some yards, whatever it was, 130 or 40, we wouldn't win that game, and he's been gone since. The other thing is that we didn't talk about in terms of the difficulties is that when you're traveling west, you're not just going through time zones. You're going to the mountains. That stadium is 5,000 feet high. So we're talking about the players have to be super prepared for that in a conditioning way, because the difference, even though West Virginia obviously is in the mountains, the difference is like 3,800 feet between the elevation of Mountaineer Field and the stadium at BYU. And so I think that's important. So I agree with what Mick said, and I think that's a headline, because who thought that Watkins would have any chance as a redshirt freshman? People thought that Max Brown, having played at Florida and then at University of North Carolina, Charlotte, and being a starter last year, or Henderson from Texas A&M, would be competitors. So, but Rich Rod mentioned him yesterday in his press conference. And so, we wouldn't be surprised to see Watkins out there as a starting quarterback.
It wouldn't surprise me a bit. And like I said, Rich discovered Pat White by injury, and you never know. And again, it gives them a chance to evaluate these people in game conditions. And you can practice all you want, but you really don't know until you get on in that game setting. And again, that's the silver lining to all this mess, is that you do get to see some of these people and get to see them perform and see what they do. And it may bode well for the future. There's no way of knowing until he gets out there and does it. So you gotta look for those positives, and you gotta think for those for positive things, and like Mickey said, one game at a time, and focus on that. Focus on getting better. I think you don't always judge, the success of the season by wins and losses. I know that's a big part of it, and that's what it's all about. But you can have success and not necessarily have wins, and that is, building a program and getting better and developing players and that sort of thing. So, as I know a lot of people say, well, that's the way losers talk, but that's the reality, and we're not going to be national champions. We're not probably not going to be in a bowl game. You've got to have something to shoot for and show improvement, and I think that's key and important for us. So hopefully we'll go out and have a good showing.
Yeah. Well, I've got this right here, if you can see it. It's that time of the show. It's my pen. Where I'm going to write down the scores.
I thought that was my trophy.
No. Well, actually, Mickey, it was close last week. Mickey and Greg were 3 points apart, but Mickey was 2 points apart and $25 in my pocket, so he wins.
Is that? I got a new nickname. I got a new nickname for Mickey. Mickey, the Price is Right, Plumley.
Come on. Hey,
Hey, you want me to go first? I'll go first.
No. I want to go first so I got to write this down. I'm going to make it easy on you guys, and then I'm not Price is Right. I'm picking an upset. I know it's like, 18.5 is I'm picking Mountaineers 24, Cougars 21.
All right. I hope you're right.
Yeah, so, okay, I've set you guys up.
All right, Mickey, go ahead. Or you want me to go first so you can lowball me?
No. I'll go. BYU right now is in the top 10 nationally in scoring defense, rushing defense, and total defense. We've had a short week of practice. That freshman quarterback that they have is one heck of a good runner and can throw the ball fairly well. We have all these injuries. I took a look at the turnover ratio also. We've had 10 turnovers so far this year, and BYU's had 1. So that's certainly so. Hardly anything is working in our favor here. But when you look at their schedule, who have they beaten? They played Portland State, they played Stanford, East Carolina, and then barely beat Colorado by a field goal last week, 24-21. So I'm going to agree with Frank on this one. I'm going for an upset because you know what? Mountaineers fight the hardest and the longest when they face the greatest odds. That's what being a Mountaineer is all about. So I'm going to go with a low-score game. Our defense rises to the occasion. That's one really positive we have going for us this year. And I'm going to project West Virginia 17, BYU 14.
All right. And again, I hope one of you two is right. I'm going to be the bad guy again. I just look at all the the cards stacked against West Virginia, the travel, the elevation, the injuries, a new starting quarterback, which I think might give us a little bit of a boost. I've watched BYU. I'm not totally impressed with them. I don't really know how good they actually are. I watched the Colorado game. They struggled in that, and which gives me hope. And I hope beyond hope that the Mountaineers can pull it off. And I would take either score of your all's right on the dot. But with all that being said, again, with the cards stacked against us, the struggles that we've had with the injuries and so forth, I just don't know if we're good enough to overcome all these things. And I too think it's going to be fairly low scoring. I'm going with BYU 24, WVU 17.
Well,
and again, I hope you're all right.
Well, but we've got WVU scoring points, at least we think. So,
yeah.
Darren, could you just throw up that BYU profile so we can just mention some names for the fans to look for? There it is. And just to reinforce what Mickey said, when you look at their opponents so far, you really don't know how good this BYU team, because East Carolina is the only team with a winning record. And so they've lost twice as many, the opponents to BYU, they've lost twice as many than they won. But that quarterback is someone to watch because he's really more of a halfback. You can't miss him with a first name like Bear, but he's a true freshman. And remember, he's a true freshman because Retzlaff got into trouble at BYU that he was probably going to be probably suspended at the very least, but I doubt he would have played at BYU this year. So he transferred. He's at Tulane now. And so you've got a new quarterback in there. And as Mickey said, you look at their total defense, they're number 7 in the country. And they're also keeping the ball a heck of a lot of time. They're in the top 20 in terms of time of possession. And also when they get into the red zone, they score 8 out of 10 times. And so, when you think about those stats, guys, it just reminds me a lot of Utah. We said last week, watch Utah in terms of its third down proficiency. And boy, at one time they were 8 for 8 on third down. And so, any rate, let's just keep our fingers crossed. It's a late game. And so we'll just have to stay up late and hopefully it'll be an enjoyable experience.
Yeah, Frank, going back to Utah there, and they were not only were they 8 and 8 on third down, they were 4 for 4 on fourth downs, and that was throughout the game. So very, very, very efficient. And BYU similar to that. So that defense, the defense does look pretty stout, and I think that's that'll be tough for us. But again, we don't know the level of competition really. I don't think they're overwhelming, even defensively. I think we got a chance. I always think we have a chance. And now if we come out flat like we did this past weekend, we have no chance. We got to have more energy. We got to be fired up a little more. And we still play hard. Looks like we're playing hard. Just too many mistakes and just not enough. I hate to say talent, but there's just not enough readiness, ability wise. They're not physically ready. I don't think. If you look at our offensive line, it just looks so young. And it's just going to take time. So, hopefully we can find that fire we had against Pitt. If we play like that, we've got a shot, and we know it's in there. We know we're capable. So we look forward to it. And I want to mention our pregame show again. What was it? 9:00. We're going to do that. I think is what the graphic says. Right. 9:00 pregame. We won't do the postgame because that game's probably not going to be over until, probably 1:30 in the morning, I'm guessing, maybe later. So we're going to plan, I think, on doing that Sunday. Frank, is that correct?
Well, I tell you what, let's just see what happens.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason I say that is I think right now we're all on emotions. And so the question is, I think, why don't you and I put our heads together and figure out whether or not it's worth our while to do it on a Sunday morning, because then you got the pro game starting at 1:00.
Right.
But at any rate, let's stay tuned. Figure it out.
Yeah, stay tuned. We'll be putting it on Facebook and Twitter and X or whatever you call it. We'll be getting the word out there for you. So if we do or do not do it, we'll let you know one way or the other. Make sure you let everybody know and join us, and always comment. You can get on and directly comment to the show. Questions or comments you have, we'll gladly get on and discuss them. So make sure you do that, and we'll look forward to that on Friday night. Also, next Wednesday, you want to go ahead and promote next Wednesday? We can.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I tell you, our quarterback Mark Parsons keeps on throwing touchdowns. When you think of the guys that we keep on bringing on, with another quarterback, Chad Johnston, I understand is going to be fresh from a golfing weekend with Steve Newberry. Steve awesome. Told that to me, so that's great. And we hope to have Steve on one of the pre or post games pretty soon. But Chad, who is a solid quarterback in the mid-90s, will be with us next week, and we look forward to seeing Chad.
Yep, be a lot of fun. And we have gone a little overtime tonight, but I think it was well worth it with the fantastic guests we had. Terry Bowden was awesome. And again, if you watch the show tonight, spread the word to folks. Let them go back. They can go back and pull it up on the archives on YouTube, Facebook, watch it again. or watching for the first time, I'm sure they will absolutely enjoy that. That was a ton of fun. Mickey, appreciate you as always getting in here with us and giving us your expertise. We appreciate that. Frank, great job as usual. And Darren, same for you in the background. We appreciate all the work that you do. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. We look forward to coming to you again Friday night with our WU pregame show. Until then, we'll bid you good night and have a great rest of your week. Good night, everybody.